Hey everyone, how are you? Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, based on wherever you're tuning in from and or whenever you catch this video. Hey replay gang, I'm tonight to share with you. Why did that sound like that? Ooh, some amazing news in relation to Breonna Taylor. Hold on, guys. Let me make sure my sound is right here. Oh, why is my microphone? Hold on, guys. Okay, my mic is acting up. Give me a second, guys. Okay, there we go. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're golden. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Breonna Taylor. Just to refresh your memory, Breonna Taylor is a young African American woman that was unalived in her home. Let's see. Let me do this. Close that. Her unaliving in Louisville, Kentucky led to federal and state charges against officers. But one trial ended in acquittal, another in a hung jury, and a judge has dismissed some charges. The officers executed a no-knock warrant on Breonna Taylor's home. It was a drug raid. However, they had the wrong apartment. And 22 hours ago, a federal jury on Friday convicted a former Kentucky police detective of using excessive force on Breonna Taylor during a botched 2020 drug raid that left her unalived. The 12-member jury returned the late-night verdict after clearing Brent Hankerson earlier in the year. Continue to deliberate on the second charge. Some members of the jury were in tears. As the verdict was read around 9:30 p.m. Friday, they had earlier indicated to the judge in two separate messages that they were deadlocked on the charge of using excessive force on Taylor, but chose to continue deliberating. The 6-man, 6-woman jury deliberated for more than 20 hours over 3 days. Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, celebrated the verdict with friends outside of the courthouse, saying it took a lot of time, it took a lot of patience, it was hard. The jurors took their time to really understand that Breonna deserved justice. Hankerson fired 10 shots into Breonna's glass door and windows during the raid, but didn't hit anyone. Some shots flew into a next door neighbor's adjoining apartment. Today, Brent Hankerson was found guilty by a jury of his peers for willfully depriving Breonna Taylor of her constitutional rights, said Attorney General Merrick Garland in a statement. His use of deadly force was unlawful and put Ms. Taylor in harm's way. This verdict is an important step towards accountability for the violation of Breonna Taylor's civil rights, but justice for the loss of Mrs. Taylor is a task that exceeds human capacity. The conviction against Hankerson carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. His sentencing is scheduled for March 12th, 2025. This was the second attempt to convict Hankerson on 2 charges alleging the shots he fired during the raid violated the civil rights of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor and her neighbors. Last year, a federal judge declared a mistrial after jurors failed to reach a decision on the charges against the former Louisville police detective. During the retrial, prosecutors narrowed the scope of the indictment. Hankerson faced 2 civil rights charges alleging the former officer willfully used unconstitutionally excessive force while acting in his official capacity. The first count said the officer deprived Breonna Taylor's rights by firing shots through a bedroom window that was covered with blinds and a blackout curtain. In the rental, Kenneth Walker, the boyfriend, I'm chopping up. Can y'all hear me good? Okay, I'm doing all right. The boyfriend was removed from the indictment and not called to the stand, reported the Louisville Courier. The second count, which remained the same, said Hankerson deprived 3 of Taylor's neighbors of their constitutional rights by shooting through a sliding glass door covered by blinds and a curtain. Both charges alleged Hankerson used a dangerous weapon, and his conduct indicated an intent to unalive that night. 7 officers entered Breonna Taylor's apartment after midnight on March 13th, 2020 using a no-knock warrant as a part of a drug investigation. She was asleep with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who heard the noise and fired one shot from a gun at what he thought were intruders. Police opened fire, and Taylor, an EMT, was shot and unalived. Police did not find any narcotics at the apartment. Hankerson fired 10 rounds, which investigators said didn't hit anyone, through a window and sliding glass door into Breonna Taylor's apartment. Hankerson said he thought he was doing the right thing, protecting his fellow officers. On Monday, he testified there was a back and forth gun battle happening, and his fellow officers were in danger. The Associated Press reported, quoting, Hankerson is saying, it sounded like a semi-automatic rifle making its way down the hallway and executing everybody in my group. Hankerson and his attorneys used this defense through his first federal trial and a 2022 state trial, for which he was acquitted of all charges after a jury deliberated for 3 hours. This case is about Brett Hankerson's 10 shots that never hit anyone, his attorney Dan Marilock said during his closing arguments. The Associated Press reported, Brett Hankerson is charged with violating the constitutional rights of people he never met and never knew existed. The Department of Justice filed charges of civil rights violations against 4 former Louisville police officers, including Hankerson. Charges against 3 of the other officers stemmed from alleged falsification of the affidavit used to obtain the search warrant that authorized the early morning raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment. Prosecutors said federal prosecutors filed a superseding indictment weeks after a federal judge threw out major felony charges against 2 of the former officers. Louisville Police Detective Joshua Janus and former Sergeant Kyle Meany. If convicted of the federal charges, Hankerson would face a maximum sentence of life in prison in response to the enacted law in 2021 that limits when police can use no-knock warrants. So it's not a criminal verdict. It's not a criminal verdict. But the violation of her constitutional rights while acting in his official capacity, that charge does carry up to life, a maximum of life in prison. So his sentencing will be on March 12th, 2025. And I'm just gonna hope that his sentencing, the judge takes into account the fact of the loss of a life, Breonna Taylor, her mom will never be able to hold her again. Her family will never see her again. It's just, I hope she takes that all into account because it's going to be very important. Now, hold on, let me cut this music, guys. Well, actually, let me go ahead and share the screen real quick. What is wrong with this thing? It's got a commercial for what though? For what? Theo has been acting a fool whole time. This video bigger. Whole time. Welcome. Y'all be sure to tap in. Ring my doorbell, please. Hit that like button. Okay, guys, be sure to hit that like button for me. We're going to get into the video update of basically what I read from the news. Okay, I got the music off.
Tonight, news coverage from WHAS 11. I'm Doug Profit. And more courthouse. In the past hour, supporters of Breonna Taylor chanting and celebrating the verdict in the streets outside the federal courthouse at 6th and Broadway. He becomes the first Metro police officer involved in the Breonna Taylor raid 4 years ago to be held accountable by a jury, and now prison time. The guilty verdict, a shock to many, since this jury had become deadlocked, twice telling the judge they were having trouble. Isaiah Kim Martinez and senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton are live right now. They covered every day of this 3-week trial. And Isaiah, Breonna Taylor's mother speaking less than an hour ago. And the way this day played out, this verdict is a true surprise.
Can you imagine, guys?
I think you can argue for everybody who was in that courtroom on both sides.
I'm telling you, this, I can only imagine what her mother is going through right now in this moment.
You have Tamika Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mother, who let out a very audible gasp in that courtroom when the verdict was read, the words guilty, specifically of violating her daughter's civil rights, back when Brett Hankison in 2020 fired 10 shots into the side of Breonna Taylor's apartment. Of course, Brett Hankison, like Doug mentioned, is facing a maximum sentence of life in prison. I did catch up with him and his attorney moments after that conviction, just outside the courthouse. Here's some of that video.
He had nothing to say.
Are you surprised by the verdict? Did it surprise you at all?
And you hear Jack Bird, Brett Hankison's lead attorney there, saying no comment. Now, again, moments after that
no comment at whatsoever
conviction, Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, along with other family, stood on the steps of the federal court building and spoke to reporters. Of course, I spoke with her moments into that, asking her how she felt about all this. Here were some of her answers to us tonight.
Grateful. I'm grateful. Grateful to God. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of time. 1,694 days. It took. It was long. It was hard. It was. I don't even know if I got some words, but thank God. Thank God that He covered 12 jurors who chose to do the right thing, who took their time to understand what was really going on, and that Breonna deserved justice. So I'm grateful to everybody involved. We here. I was worried. People lose focus and people get, we move on so quickly from everything. So I think we all had that worry at some point or another. Yeah. I said it to you the other morning, like, I just chose to give it to God. I was carrying it all, and I was getting the moment, but I had to figure out, do something different.
I don't know how she's got real strength, and she has a great support system.
Tamika Palmer there reacting, answering my question when I asked if she was worried how it's been so long. It's been over 4 years. I do want to mention, though, again, Brett Hankison found guilty of violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights the night of that March 2020 raid, but he also, Doug, was found not guilty for the second charge in all this, and that was for violating the civil rights of the 3 neighbors in that adjacent apartment to Breonna Taylor's. His bullets went through Taylor's sliding glass door and into their apartment. He was found not guilty for that. So this is a split verdict, Doug. So it is very much, like you said, a stunning result in many ways. You could argue, of course, Brett Hankison's family and friends, this will be something that I'm getting texts already, they're actually coming to terms with this right now. I do want to mention that, again, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison, but that is at the judge's discretion. The sentencing date, that is March 12th of next year, at 10 a.m.
Let's pick up on that sentencing real quick. Of course, obviously, as we saw in that exclusive video, Brett Hankison is at least a free man tonight, leaving the courthouse until his sentencing, as you said in March, Isaiah. We want to make it clear the judge has the full sentencing power in this. Many legal experts I've talked to tonight said they are doubtful that he would get life in prison because he doesn't have a prior criminal record on this one count. So talk about that sentencing and what we could expect from in March.
Doug, you're right. It's truly at the judge's discretion. We've never seen something quite like this here in Louisville, Kentucky. I can tell you, he is out on bond like he's been throughout this entire case. The judge mentioned the fact that he has showed up to every single court date. There hasn't been any issues. So whether that good behavior as a criminal defendant weighs into her decision, that could be something that we'll have to look into, Doug.
So we talked about why this is such a shock. Let's go through the timeline right now, Isaiah, because it was a roller coaster. And we've put it on the screen for you to go through the exact timing of how this day played out.
Yeah, Doug, it was just before 1 p.m., 1 this afternoon, that the judge got a note from the jury saying, essentially, we cannot come to a verdict. I think the exact words, I actually have it up here. The jury essentially saying they're deadlocked. They can't come to a unanimous agreement, a unanimous decision. Then, fast forward about 6 hours, the jury then says they disagree on 1 count. So what does that mean? Then they continue to deliberate. An hour later, the jury returns that partial verdict, initially finding Brett Hankison not guilty of the charge involving the neighbors. And then a couple hours later, that shocking moment, the judge reading the verdict, guilty, convicted on the charge directly relating to Breonna Taylor. Doug.
This is definitely in a federal court. This case was heard in federal court. So, just to update everyone that's just coming in, on Friday, 23 hours ago, one of the officers associated with the no-knock warrant that was served on Breonna Taylor's home on March 30th. In that incident, she was unalived. He has been found guilty of violating her civil rights. The charge that he's been found guilty on carries a maximum of life in prison. I almost certainly, as they said, I doubt that he will get life, but I hope that it's sufficient amount of time is given. To be honest with you, but the fact that he's a cop, any amount of time in jail is probably in prison is going to be like horrible for him. But I would hope that his sentence wouldn't be like 2 years or 3 years. I would hope that it's in the area of like 15 to 20. But guys, that's all I wanted to share with you. I almost forgot that I wanted to update you guys on this verdict, which is, I would say, groundbreaking. And hopefully it will help other officers nationwide to realize that people have rights. And they can be charged for violating them. All right, guys. I will catch you on the next one. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe today. Set your notifications to all so that you're notified when I go live or add new content.